Okay, everybody, welcome. I'm Claire Card. I'm the CMO at Aztec, and I'm going to be hosting Joe and Zach, our co-founders, today. We're going to give everybody just a couple minutes to sort of filter in and join us before we kick off the conversation. Definitely feel free to drop an emoji on kind of how you're feeling today. I'm feeling excited for this, but a little bit tired because I traveled yesterday. But yeah, really excited you guys are all here. Welcome. All right.
Hello.
Zach just joined. Hey, Zach, how's it going?
Hey, good. Life is good.
Nice. I told everybody we're going to let people kind of filter in. We'll just sort of chill for a little bit. I'm going to put you on the spot. I know you're in Lisbon. I know you went to the first As Techno party last night. How was it? Was it good? Did everybody have fun?
Oh yeah, it was great. Yeah, great time. A lot of cool people, good music. Great as technology. Uh,
I
um,
saw the photos. I was a little bit jealous. I love like glow sticks and stuff.
mm,
And I felt jealous. It looked fun.
it was a lot of fun actually. Yeah, it's nice to nice to work hard and play hard.
Nice. That's awesome. Cool. All right. Well, we're still having people join us. Yeah, everybody who's joining, welcome. I'm Claire. I'm the CMO at Aztec. We're going to be joined today by Zach and Joe, our co-founders, and we are going to be getting into the interactive product roadmap that we shared today and just discussing kind of like our road to mainnet and what this big milestone looks like for Aztec. So we'll start at 9:05, let people have some more time to join. And yeah, just welcome people along the way. So thanks for tuning in.
Hey everyone, happy to be here.
Amazing. Welcome, Joe. Where in the world are you?
I'm in London. We've got engineering on site at the moment, so we've got a load of people building away in the office behind me.
Okay, amazing. How's the energy?
Yeah, it's great. We've got
Cool.
validators running, people building really cool things. So yes, it's great.
That's awesome. Cool, cool. Yeah, thanks for taking time away. I know you guys are really cooking over there. It's a week long, right?
Yeah, we've been here since Monday. So we've got 2 days, well, tomorrow left, and the rest of the day.
Nice, very cool. Cool. Well, people are still filtering in. We'll just give it one more minute and then we'll officially kick off. So hang tight if you've joined. And yeah, feel free to ping any friends that you don't see in here. It's not too late to join. We haven't kicked off quite yet. Okay, it looks like we have a pretty good crew here. So let's think about, yeah, kicking off. So to everybody who just joined, welcome. I'm Claire Cart. I'm the CMO at Aztec. Was fortunate enough to join just a few months ago. So still getting my feet wet, but absolutely loving it and super excited to talk about what we're here to celebrate today, which is Aztec's road to mainnet and the product roadmap that we shared this week, which is interactive. If you haven't had a chance to check it out, it's really, really cool. And I think the link is pinned here somewhere in the comments. So definitely check that out. But more importantly, today I am joined by the co-founders of Aztec, Joe and Zach. I want to pass the mic over to them to introduce themselves, and then we'll get into some questions about, kind of how we got here, the road to Mainnet, what to expect for everybody in the community, and then we're going to leave time at the end for community questions. So if you do have a question, definitely get ready. We'll be unmuting people and welcoming them up to ask their question. But yeah, without further ado, Joe, Zach, who wants to go first, introducing yourself?
I can go first. Hello, I'm Zach, one of the co-founders of Aztec. So what am I? I am a cryptographer and an engineer and an ex-scientist, and somehow a CEO now. So yeah, it's been a long road. Been doing this for 7 years, and originally, was pioneering the cryptography and the research, and now moved into a more general role, wearing many hats, trying to get this thing to mainnet, trying to light this rocket.
Amazing. Joe, take it away.
Yeah, so I'm not many of those things, but I do a lot more of our kind of like protocol design on the decentralization side, thinking about all of the things you can build with Aztec and putting that amazing kind of cryptography and execution environment to work. So I'm Zach's co-founder, and yeah, I've been doing this with Zach for 7 years now. So it's been a long, fun road.
Yeah, you're underselling yourself there. You're the one that kind of pulls everything together and actually makes it all work and makes it function. I just turn up and I'm like, oh yeah, wouldn't it be nice if I just sketch some weird math on the board and whiteboard, and then you've got to somehow turn it into a product. So yeah.
Chinese whispers all the way down, because then I take that and tell that to the people behind us, and they're like, "Oh, okay." So it's a good fun. It's a good combination. It works well.
I was also going to jump in and say one thing I've learned about you guys since I joined the project is you are both incredibly humble, and I think you're constantly sort of underselling yourself. At least that's the American in me, and I know you guys are both very British. So yeah, really like just incredible founders here and incredible what the team's been building. Obviously, like getting into that interactive product roadmap. So we want to talk about it more. We want to talk about like what these past 7 years have been like, upcoming milestones, as well as how to get involved. As people know, or maybe if you're new to Aztec, right, we are really on this mission to solve one of the biggest problems and one of the biggest barriers to mass blockchain adoption, which is privacy. And to do this, like we are working towards a fully decentralized privacy preserving network. As Joe and Zach mentioned, like this has been a 7-year journey, right? And when I first really learned about Aztec from them, I sort of thought about it like almost as this onion, right? Like they started out thinking like, okay, yeah, here's this onion. And then realized, all right, in order to get to this, in order to actually do this fully decentralized privacy preserving network, peeling back all these layers, like, okay, well, now we need to build this. Wait a second. Now we need to build this, right? And kind of ended up like building things really from the ground up. So it's really kind of like a soup to nuts privacy solution, which is incredible. And then like bringing us to today, in August, we launched in Aztec DevNet. So that has been running, really exciting. Some of the folks in our alpha build program have been actually deploying like smart contracts on it and seeing how it works. And that's been a lot of learnings for us, a lot of learnings for our community. And then in September, we launched an early provernet. So just getting our network of decentralized provers in there, and making sure that works. Again, getting ready for testnet and mainnet. And we're really at this point now where like testnet is in sight and mainnet is in sight. And the product roadmap is how all of this comes together, right? You guys see there's like 5 tracks and there's quite a lot to ingest. So I think in order to kind of pull this apart, we want to dive into some questions for the founders. And so guys, if you don't mind, we're going to kind of get into it. First, I just want to understand a little bit more about like what inspired you to build Aztec. Like what problems were you trying to solve? What was the thing you saw in the world that you really wanted to change?
Who should go first?
I'll take a stab, and then we can talk a bit more about kind of like what this means. But I think we really kind of we came about on this problem out of necessity. So we all met kind of back in 2017, and we were trying to do something a little bit different. We're trying to put corporate debt onto Ethereum, and kind of give kind of large bank loans a place to trade away from a bank's trading desk. And kind of naivety back then was like, oh, this will be a fun project. Let's dive in. And we kind of only realized after we started peeling back that first layer of the onion that we needed strong privacy guarantees to do something like that. And that kind of like opened up us kind of just diving deeper down the rabbit hole of trying to get privacy on a kind of public distributed ledger. And it's kind of led us to what we've been building today. But it was that first kind of real world problem of trying to solve an issue with a traditional financial system, bring it on chain, and we kind of ran into the issue of needing strong privacy to do that because people wouldn't accept in the Web 2 world a reduction in their privacy. They're already used to kind of things like their portfolios being private, their trades being private, all those kind of things that they expect in a traditional financial ecosystem. We just couldn't deliver on a kind of distributed ledger like Ethereum, and so that really kind of sparked the journey. And that was kind of almost 7 years ago. We pivoted away from that as soon as we realized the scale of kind of how many layers the onion had, I guess, to stay with the analogy. But it's been really fun kind of peeling each one back and kind of crafting this into the perfect kind of privacy system that you could now build a product like that on. So you could build kind of traditional real world asset settlement using Aztec, which is it's really exciting to come full circle.
Yeah, absolutely. I can add to that. I like the peeling the onion analogy because certainly in 2017, when we realized just what we had to do to get this corporate debt thing working, we peel back the first layer and then we start crying because damn, privacy is hard. So to add on to what Joe said, like we started researching zero knowledge proof, zero knowledge cryptography in like winter of 2017, 2018 to try and solve this privacy problem for our very like application specific use case. And I had a thought which I think everyone has had in their professional career and maybe has come to regret it, where you look at something that's a little bit undefined but possibly hard, and you think, how hard can it really be? And it turns out very hard. Zero knowledge is hard, but basically, we realized once we'd solved that problem, as Joe said, like solve the privacy problem through developing some zk technology, developing Plonk, that hang on, providing privacy preserving infrastructure for blockchain platforms is a much more valuable idea than the original Crediment idea. Basically, building infrastructure to help other teams create Crediment like products. And also, I think we also became kind of ZK pilled over time, where there was a lot about the world that I just accepted as the way things had to be, particularly when it comes to things like basically everybody's information getting divulged online, everybody being manipulated by mass advertising. Because I was thinking, well, how else do you fund things on the web? This intense information transparency between individuals, users, and the products that they're interacting with. I just thought that was the way things had to be, and then I learned about zero knowledge cryptography, and then you combine that tech with a distributed ledger, and then wow, things don't have to be that way. You can actually prove things about yourself without revealing all your information. You can create services that aren't harvesting your data, and then you can create monetization models through things like micropayments or other, possibly some other kind of token economic models to rival advertising. And that concept really captivated me. Basically, the idea that maybe it might be possible to fix the internet. So yeah, that's I guess you could say it's kind of been our guiding light as we've developed Aztec. It's create a programmable privacy network and then use that to help people develop compelling products that can compete with Web 2 on a level playing field.
Yeah. Okay. I want to jump into this fix the internet thing, right? So I think I've been in crypto professionally for like seven-ish, maybe 8 years now. I've lost track. But I think there's this sense that people will just sort of accept this lack of privacy. I'm not talking about probably like us or the people on this call, right? Like I think the people on this call really care about this, but I talk to a lot of other people who just somehow are like okay that all of their information is on chain. I find this so surprising. I guess I always think back to the internet, right? Like the actual internet. And I guess I'm curious if you guys think, like, would it have ever gained mass adoption if all the information sent over it was unencrypted? Like, can we see a world where that would have happened? Because when I think about like onboarding the next wave in crypto, I'm like, people will not accept this. And yeah, I'm just curious what you guys think. Like, is this necessary? Do you think maybe we're in a different kind of like post-privacy world?
Yeah, I mean, maybe I can take a stab at. I think like we've seen this play out before. Like the internet before SSL certificates had kind of it had usage. It had a certain type of application that was being used. But if you compare it to kind of uh, like the internet post something like the SSL certificate, there was a huge boom in the types of things you could do. You could suddenly start doing commerce, like things like PayPal were created, kind of online card payments were created, and then like the second wave of like being able to send things like your location via Uber. And like request a taxi, like all of that requires an inherent level of privacy. It doesn't solve kind of the issue of like large platforms gathering up that data that kind of came about because of how the model existed. But we definitely saw a step change in the internet pre kind of encryption through SSL certificates and post encryption. And my mental model is that that's kind of what we're seeing with Ethereum today and public blockchains. Like there is activity, people are using it. Like we've seen a lot of growth in the crypto space, but it's kind of the tip of the iceberg to what's possible once we have strong privacy guarantees, and that's where I'm kind of excited about like where the puck's going, because I think the next wave of things, just you can't imagine what they'll look like, because they won't look like the things we have today on a blockchain. They'll require very different primitives that Aztec enables.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Maybe another way of thinking about it is pre-encryption, pre-SSL, the internet was fun, and then post-encryption, the internet was useful but serious. I do think we're in a slightly different era, though, where people were much more data conscious, information conscious in the early days of the internet. Like there was the regular mantra of, do not reveal any information about yourself online. Always use a pseudonym, don't use a real name, don't let anybody know about your real address, and God forbid, do not put any credit card details on the internet. Nowadays, people are much more accustomed to basically just signing some disclaimer form they don't read and then forking over all their data to basically whoever asks for it. And to kind of like to slightly expand on your point, Claire. So I was at a talk the other day, giving a talk, holding a bottle of water, and somebody was asking me something similar, and I think I said, if Aztec was going to like rely on people to pay for privacy to succeed, I wouldn't be drinking water. I'd be drinking pure grain alcohol, because that's a bad bet to make. I think it's pretty clear these days that people, like the average person on the street, doesn't really care about privacy enough to pay for it. If that's the pure differential. Partially because I think the harmful effects of information transparency they're more systematic, as in they damage the society, but they might not actually damage the individual that much. And also, there's just a limited level of education, I think, within our public discourse about the damage that all this information transparency can do. So, really, what Aztec is focusing on, and especially in the early days, is what Joe said. Basically, the design space of what you can do with a Web3 smart contract is going to explode once you have privacy, just like the design space of what you could do with a website exploded once you had strong encryption guarantees. It really is a very powerful primitive, being able to bring an identity on chain, like defining who you are, but only disclosing it to smart contracts or to specific counterparties you want to interact with. That's incredibly powerful. It's what we need for Web3 to reach into the real world in a meaningful way and move away from synthetic tokens and assets and into something real.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, the way you guys think and talk about privacy, I think is really inspiring and also like very real, right? Like Zach, your comment about like, look, the average person is not going to necessarily pay a premium for this, right? It sort of has to be kind of this ubiquitous default. Just mission of Aztec is like super ambitious on that. Okay, before we get into walking through the roadmap, because we're going to do that, I want to hear I want to hear a little story about like maybe like the hardest challenge you guys have faced to get to this point, because we are at this inflection point, right? There's a dev net, we're close to test net. We know that means like a main net will follow. So looking back over the last 7 years, like what's a challenge that really sticks out, or just like a really hard thing that you've overcome in building this?
I think I can give one, because like just the sheer cryptography that's had to be built by kind of like Zach and Ariel and all the amazing cryptographers. I think like this wasn't possible 7 years ago. Like ZK snarks did exist, but the kind of improvements that have been spearheaded by kind of the researchers at Aztec and Zach, I think are kind of testament to kind of pulling this into life. So I think it's not one that I've personally overcome, but definitely, yeah, like Aztec's cryptography, like Plonk, all the different proving systems that we've made over the years are probably the hardest part of doing this, because without that, you can't have credible client-side privacy. Like you need proofs to be constructed in a resource-constrained environment on a phone, and kind of getting that right and making that possible has taken kind of many iterations and a lot of our focus. It's not just building kind of the network out. We have to have the cryptography to back it up.
I can answer that. I'm flattered, but thanks, Jay. I think one of the hardest challenges we've had, probably for me, was convincing Joe to not sail solo around the world until we've launched Aztec, because we need him. No, I'm messing around. Like certainly the cryptography was extremely hard, but it's one of those things where the problem was hard, but also, I'm a cryptographer and an engineer. I have access to some of the best cryptographers in the world, some of the most talented applied cryptographers in the world. So it's kind of like it was hard, but it was a hard problem that we were good at. It was like, aligned with solving. And I think there was a lot of challenges that we faced at Aztec, where we've had to solve problems that don't fall into the core competences of anybody, particularly in the organization. So honestly, one of the challenges has been the sheer difficulty of building an organization to execute on this. Like back in the early days, it was just 4 of us, and like life is very simple when what you're producing is limited by your own 2 hands and the ability to exercise your own mind. And then, but once you want to scale, right, you got to go beyond that. You got to build a team. You got to get people aligned with your vision. You got to get them. You got to communicate across multiple individuals. Make sure everybody's working in the same direction. You got to everyone becomes a stakeholder that you need to kind of align. You need to consider, and particularly growing to 30 people, growing to 60 people. I think I think I can speak for Joe as well. Like we found that very challenging, like building the kind of organization that can produce and execute on this roadmap, right? It's the complexity is overwhelming. And yeah, basically like creating a space where we can attract the best people in the world to work on this, to actually build this. When, like, to be honest, Joe and I at the start, right, we had no idea what we were doing there. This was my first startup. I'm like, I'm an entrepreneur. I didn't know anything. And like, this is Joe's second go around, but still, like, we've only had experience working at small companies. We've never worked in a large company. We don't know how it works. And so I think pulling in a lot, we've had to pull in a lot of very talented, very capable people to provide those competences that we lack. And yeah, making it all work together, making the sausage. For me, that's been the biggest challenge.
Yeah, I think that's something that's like not talked about enough, right? Like you get a bunch of technical founders in a room, they find some success, and like all of a sudden, you're leading people and building HR systems, and it's like, and then like Zach, you're still super into the technical details, right? You're still like into the cryptography, and Joe, you're like very hands-on with, managing the technical team, the product team, like the roadmap. So yeah, I think that's something that's not talked about enough, or really at all. Okay, speaking of insane complexity, we are going to get into the interactive roadmap, because I think like this really brings to life like all of those moving parts, and hopefully is a great resource for the community to just like get a sense of how this all fits together. It's probably going to be hard to walk through every single detail, but there's a couple themes I kind of want to touch on. And then, guys, if you have anything you really want to talk about, like please bring it in. This technology and kind of how it all fits together better than anyone. Does everybody have the link to the roadmap if you kind of want to check it out and follow along? If not, maybe our host can drop it in. So yeah, getting into that, I want to look first at the second track, which is decentralization. And before we kind of like get into like where we are now and a little preview of what's to come, I want you guys to talk a little bit about why this is important. And I know this is going to seem so obvious, right? But we've seen a lot of projects launch. They're not decentralized. And then they say, hey, look, we're going to decentralize over time. Please trust us. We value this. Whereas both of you are like, we are going to be decentralized on day one. So talk a little bit about like why you feel so strongly about that and like what it takes to get there, because it's not an easy challenge to solve, right? It is much easier to launch centralized, but like Aztec is very principled and doesn't want to do that. So I want to hear both of your points of view on why, like, why is this essential?
Do you want to take this, Joe?
Yeah, I could take it. I mean, it's not an easy answer. I mean, I think I think Zach said this before. Like, we would like to launch centralized if we could. It's safer. There's lots of things that there are advantages to it. You can ship faster. But the real reason it comes down to is that like privacy is a contentious subject, and if we look at kind of the world today, like some regimes are very favorable to it, some regimes are not, and like as a global company, we have to kind of think carefully about that, and having kind of one single point of failure in such a kind of sensitive or like hostile subject, it's a risk to the network, and we want to see privacy as a force for good, not be kind of bogged down in kind of like who's controlling it. And so we've kind of taken the decision to launch decentralized because we don't think that anyone should control privacy, and we think it should be kind of just pure cryptography that people run on their phones, and yeah, it's a human right. And so if we're kind of sitting there administering other people's privacy, then it just kind of undermines it a little bit, and so it doesn't give the same kind of guarantees that you get from something like an SSL certificate. So it's just more about the nature of privacy, I would say, that's forcing us down this path. It does make things harder. It does kind of extend timelines, but I think on a long-term basis, I've spoken about this before. It's actually a blessing in disguise because it's very hard to kind of add decentralization later. And so this is kind of like one of my kind of personal vendettas against centralized rollups is that people say they're going to decentralize, but we've almost walked that road with Aztec Connect, and we launched a centralized rollup, and it just wasn't designed for decentralization, which meant that it's actually maybe an order of magnitude harder to decentralize it after the fact. And so even though it's harder, and kind of takes longer, I do think that once the system's live, it's a much more robust and resilient system, and yeah, hopefully it should stand the test of time. So I know it's a complicated answer, but I still think it's the correct decision to pursue this path, especially given the space we're in.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna give a spicy prediction that I really hope I don't regret. Aztec is decentralizing on day one, um, not because we want to, but because we need to. And the fact that we need to be decentralized, I think, here's the spicy thing. I think because we actually we need to decentralize because we're conforming to the ethos of decentralization. I think that's a pretty good sign that here's the hubris. What Aztec's going to launch has product market fit because we actually need decentralization. If you're launching an LT that's centralized, I think the big question on the brain should be, well, why do you need a blockchain? Back in 2017, right? I don't know if people remember. There's probably people in this chat that weren't born back then, but there was this thing called JP Morgan Quorum or Quorum. It was basically a private blockchain in the old school sense, privately hosted that enterprise could use, and it died because really it was no different to a private server, just with a lot of unnecessary blockchain abstractions on top, and what's the difference between JP Morgan Quorum and an L2 that's centralized? I would argue nothing except branding. And so if you have an L2 where you are centralized, your user base is okay with that, you've got a problem on your hands, because decentralizing adds costs and overheads to your users, right? Your network latency will suffer, your transaction costs will increase. And your users aren't going to like that, because you're probably competing on pure throughput, pure like transaction volume and price at that point. So you put yourself in a local optimization trap. Aztec, as Joe said, we need to launch decentralized. And the way I think about it is, take the internet, right? Imagine if I was a politician and I stood up and I'm like, we need to shut down the internet. You'd think I was like, you think I was lunatic, I'd be some authoritarian asshole, right? But if the internet was controlled by Internet Limited Liability Corporation and everything went through Internet Corp's servers, then it would absolutely get shut down. It would have got shut down 20 years ago. Because the network needs to be neutral. It needs to be neutral for people to have confidence they can build on it without getting rugged. It needs to be neutral so that people have confidence, they feel that they can deploy significant resources, both in terms of time and money, to build products and services on Aztec, where there is a social contract that they know that the Aztec network is not going to disadvantage and bias them, censor them. Basically, same guarantees as the internet. I think it's extremely important for Aztec.
Yeah, it's easy. I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like all of us on the team, everybody listening, right? We're all kind of like of different generations. And it's easy to kind of lose sight of the fact that, like the internet is like really owned by no one, right? And likewise, how could we possibly build this next generation of technology, where, it's owned or controlled by a single entity? It's mind blowing to think we would even consider that, right? And to your point, there was sort of that era of all the enterprise closed garden blockchains, and they were super well funded, and none of those took off, right? They have all kind of gone by the wayside. So definitely think decentralization is the way, but it is not the easy path, which is it's a long-termist view. Okay, let's get into the roadmap. I want to ask you guys, I know everybody is here for the nitty-gritty. They want the details, and we're going to end with the last track, which is community participation, so that everybody knows kind of how they can get involved, and then we'll roll into questions. But I would love for you guys to just go through those first 4 tracks and just kind of highlight where are things at, what are we working on? Just give a quick overview, we've launched DevNet and we're on the way to testnet. So what are some of the big things to kind of look out for on each of these tracks? Who wants to take programmable privacy? Zach?
Yeah, I guess that's kind of my thing, right? So where to start with programmable privacy? I guess we've been working on this for about 6 years now. Literally, we've worked on 6 years. Ever since I started working on researching ZK Snugs, pretty clear in my head that the end goal was, man, I want to write a smart contract where you can have private state. That's going to be powerful. Actually executing that is somewhat challenging, but we have the core technology to do it now. As you can see, up everything we've released our DevNets. We have all of the things on the way to testnet are very much under execution. So this track is very much about, it's not about the core cryptography to enable programmable privacy. It's but what abstractions do you layer on top? For example, we have something here called the Trixie, which is the does this have a test execution environment? It's basically it's a test version of something we call Pixie, which is private execution environment. If you have secrets, if you have data in a blockchain that's private, right? So you have some secrets that control access to that data, and you have an application that wants to send private transactions, right? That application somehow needs access to your secrets, but it needs access to the data, but you don't want to give it access to the secrets, because then otherwise apps can just snoop on what you're doing and spy on you, and then the whole purpose of ASIC is destroyed. So being able to build a little kind of mini blockchain node within a secure environment within a web browser to handle the private component of Aztec was very challenging, because it's not kind of been done before, not the way we want to do it. So that's challenging. We built the test version. We're building the actual full version now, Pixie, in the browser. we need to execute on like fees, because in an L2 it's complicated. You have different resources. There's going to be an L1 resource cost, but also there's an L2 resource cost. How do you measure that? How do you like how do you track that all inside a circuit? That's nearly done now. And yeah, I mean, I could go into more of the specific details. AVM stands for Aztec Virtual Machine because we have a ZKVM. That's one little an entire ZKVM is just one little box in this roadmap, just to give a hint at what we're actually trying to pull off here. So yeah, we're pretty close to testnet. Post testnet, a lot of it's about standards. It's about auditing our code. It's about creating a lot of the equivalents of ERCs for launch, so that we have good standards and templates for how to do basic actions on Aztec.
Amazing. So next up is decentralization. Obviously, we talked a little bit about more like the philosophical part of decentralization. Joe, you actually made like a really good case for why it's fundamental and like really important for Aztec to do. But can you step us through a little bit of just like where are we now? What's on deck? Like maybe any challenges, maybe what people can expect.
Yeah, definitely. So we just posted recently on our forum kind of a write-up of kind of how decentralized block building is going to work. We've done this very publicly over the last year, kind of asking the community for their thoughts, and the design's kind of evolved significantly over the last 12 months. But now we have a kind of a design that we think is pretty great. It kind of relies on this notion of like I think in research and literature they're called payload timeliness committees, but basically it's a group of L2 nodes who have a sole purpose of kind of signing off that a block can be proven. And that's been kind of the main challenge here, is like working out in a private rollup context how we can get fast execution pre-confirmations when proof construction can take 10, 20 minutes to actually make a proof on L1. And so a lot of the work here has been around kind of building what is again one box here on the far right, the pending chain, has kind of been one of the biggest challenges. But maybe taking a step back, I can talk about the different kind of entities that we care about decentralizing, and I guess the reason why we're doing that. So at the outset, like I think like sequencing, like most L2s have a sequencer, and it's normally fairly centralized. So in Aztec, like we'll have kind of a decentralized sequencing set, usually doing some staking, and then picked state weighted from that set to produce blocks. Those guys get to kind of order transactions, decide what goes in a block, and kind of add it to the pending chain. We'll also have kind of a way to pick from that set validators to kind of test that the pending chain can be proven. And then the other entity here that we care about decentralizing is the provers. It's no kind of use just decentralizing one part of this, because if you then just have a centralized prover, you can kind of come after that entity, or it's a single point of failure. So we've had to kind of think about the entire block production lifecycle, from what's in a block to how you prove the block, and it's kind of shown in the middle of this kind of the now section of the decentralization track, and working out how these all talk to each other through sequencer prover coordination has also been a bit of a challenge, like working out kind of what we should enshrine in the protocol and what we should kind of leave to the community to figure out. And yeah, I'm pretty happy with where we've got to. And actually, yeah, this week we just got kind of a pending chain working with 48 validators kind of attesting to it. It's been running for, I think, maybe like the last 16 hours. So it may go down yet still, but you can see kind of this is getting pretty close to kind of a working testnet. But yeah, I think it's one of the most kind of exciting tracks, because we're pushing the boundaries of kind of a lot of definitions that get argued about on crypto Twitter quite a lot. Like, what is a roll up? Are we kind of like an L1 with a validating bridge? And what you do in this track really makes a difference. And we've definitely stayed firmly in the camp of being a roll up, where we rely on kind of Ethereum for kind of security, for liveness, and censorship resistance as much as possible. And so that's been the overarching kind of not struggles, but work that's had to go into this track to make sure we stay in that camp of being a roll up.
Yeah, definitely some opportunities to get into sort of the terminology wars here, right? Actually, I was thinking when we dropped this, maybe that would happen, but it hasn't happened yet. So I don't I don't know what that means, but yeah, good things to point out. Let's get into proving system, and then we'll do Noir, and then community participation, and then yeah, we'll open it up for questions. So Zach, like you and many others, right? Ariel and the whole crypto team are really deep on this. It started with Plonk, which was like such a innovation for the industry and is like a cornerstone, right? I mean, not to brag on you, but like it really did sort of change things. And then it's evolved into all these names, which I find like kind of funny, right? Mega honk. I heard now maybe there's an ultra mega honk. I'm not sure. And I know Ariel just presented about sparse folding at ZK Summit. So can you give us just like a peek of kind of like what's going on here and where we're at?
Yeah, I can try. And you're right. I think Plonk is, hopefully with hindsight, people will think Plonk is a big deal. So yeah, if folks who have the roadmap open, looking at the proving system part, I think this kind of tracks the Aztec cryptography team's descent into madness. So we're probably at the seventh circle of hell at this point. No, but yeah, the names are a little bit ridiculous, but very fun. So yeah, all of the things ending in onk are generally iterations, refinements, improvements on the original Plonk protocol. Sometimes like substantial improvements, as in like our cryptography today bears almost no resemblance to that original Plonk paper from 2019. It's very much a ship of Theseus. So we have a few components to our prover, to our cryptography. You've got that basic ZK proving system. Hey, given a program, prove it. But there's so much more to it these days because an Aztec transaction isn't just one program. It's a concatenation of many programs. Because if you have a smart contract that calls another smart contract, well, those are two independent programs. Then you need to compose them all together. How do you do that? Well, you need to fold them with ProtoGalaxy. But ProtoGalaxy has some expensive operations that are difficult to do, clients say. So how do you solve that? Well, you do something called Goblin. And Goblin requires this translator component, and it requires a ECCVM, stands for elliptic curve virtual machine. We have Aztec has the most hipster ZKVM in the entire industry, in the entire world. It's a zero-knowledge virtual machine that only does elliptic curve math, nothing else. And so, basically figuring out how this all works together, and not just building the core technological components, the cryptographic components, but actually integrating them end to end, getting something which works in a web browser. Pretty hard, but that's what we've got to. We're in a place where you can take a complicated Aztec transaction, so something which does, account abstraction, calling a decentralized exchange, a couple of token transfers, maybe a little bit of extra stuff as well on top, and we can prove that in a web browser in under a minute now, which is, not the user experience we want to be at long term, but for our first release, we're really happy with that. That took a lot of sweat, blood, and tears to do. Sparse folding and like the stuff I was presenting about stack proofs, which is a paper that we've published that describes some of this. It's basically a big optimization that reduces memory consumption. Because when you have a circuit that describes, your program statement or the Aztec kernel, basically lots of wires are zero, and being able to actually ensure that there's a heuristic that are like when we're designing this previous system, there's a heuristic we settle on, which is basically if you have a wire in a circuit whose value is zero, you shouldn't pay for it. And that sparse folding is basically how we achieve that. And by pay for it, I mean in terms of computation. So yeah, as you can see, everything is almost ready to go for testnet on the cryptography side. So we are close to firing out our internal audits and actually ensuring this rat's nest of complexity is secure.
Amazing. I need to sit down this weekend and read the paper from Ariel. It looks really, Ariel and others, it looks really, really interesting. Let's quickly touch on Noir and then get into community participation. So I know our PM for Noir is on the spaces. Hi, Savio. I was wondering, Joe or Zach, I'm not sure who's best, but just really quickly, like bring us up to date. I know we're very close to the Noir 1.0 pre-release, and then it'll go into audits. What does everybody need to know about Noir and kind of like where it's at?
Not good.
Yeah, Noir is great.
Sorry, this is
Noir
Jack.
has super fans. I love this. Go
um,
ahead,
yeah,
Jack.
I can say a few words. I mean, I think like looking at what Noir is and like what it's used for. So Noir has kind of two uses in the protocol. So we actually write the protocol in Noir. So Noir is this kind of generic ZK language that we can use, but it's incredibly powerful that we can also use it through metaprogramming functionality to define and write smart contracts in Aztec as well. So it has these two use cases, and really over the last year, it's kind of it's probably improved in DevX and performance and all categories by orders of magnitude. Like I think definitely in the performance camp, maybe sometimes many orders of magnitude. So it's really coming along, and we're getting to a point where we're gonna like start thinking about what's in the Noir 1.0 kind of pre-release and release. That's kind of scheduled towards the end of this year, which is really exciting. But really, the way I think about Noir is kind of it's it's what you can do inside an Aztec contract. So if something exists as a Noir library, it means that you can do that. You can use that library in an Aztec contract. And like the best example, I think, is maybe like an RSA signature. So if you have an RSA signature library in Noir, then well, you can use that to do a generic ZK proof. But you can also use that to do passport verification in Aztec or even credit card signature validation. Like all of these Web2 primitives use RSA, which is really exciting. So I think just seeing it progress as a language and get to a point where the performance is no longer a bottleneck to kind of doing these step change kind of functionalities inside like a contract, an Aztec contract is very exciting. Like I think we're not really bottlenecked by the Noir primitives anymore. We're more kind of bottlenecked by kind of calling Aztec contracts in the Aztec L2, which is a very exciting place to be. So yeah, it's not done yet, but it's kind of I'd say in the tail end, and now we're kind of focusing on things like the DevX, like how do we get even better kind of developer experience through our like language server. So this is like a VS Code plugin. I think this week, in fact, the parser which kind of regenerates the Noir code was sped up by kind of 10x, and it was rewritten. So we're kind of focusing on like DevX improvements now for developers actually writing Noir, not as much the language features, which are kind of getting close to kind of feature complete.
Yeah, very cool. I've not to pat our own back here, but I've heard from a couple of people that DevX is incredible. I wish I had the ability to evaluate that for myself, but I'll trust the folks that are sharing that because I have a lot of respect for them. So kudos to what you guys have built there. Let's and actually before we move on, so I'll drop a little pre-announcement here, but we are going to do our first NoirCon at DevCon. So that'll be on 11/11, and it's going to be like super focused on just like, technical talks, technical workshops, showcasing teams that are building with Noir. So if you're interested in ZK DSLs, if you're already a Noir builder, like definitely bookmark that and we'll be sharing more details. All right, last up is community participation, which is kind of the most important track because we are slowly opening the floodgates here, right, for how people can get involved and kind of be a part of what the team has been building and be a part of this mission. Who wants to take us through this? There's some exciting stuff going on, and then obviously like looking forward to testnet.
What I talk about like some of the stuff that we've done previously with community participation and our approach, and then maybe Joe, you can talk about like the cool upcoming stuff and more recent things.
Sounds great.
So yeah, I mean, like it has to. We very much have like try to adopt the ethos of building in public. Which wasn't always the case. Back in the day, everything was whilst we were open source, our code was we would build our code in private repositories, right? And then we'd only make the public when we were confident that it was ready. And about 2 years ago, we transitioned into a quite consciously into a radical open structure because a network Aztec is nothing without its community, and we wanted to show the community what we're doing. We wanted to get people involved, get their feedback, and that's kind of manifested through our request for proposals. When we run up against hard problems in Aztec, we don't shy away from it, and we're very open about it. And we'll put out a request for proposal, basically going like, hello, community. We have this problem. We're not entirely sure how to solve it. We have some ideas, but maybe somebody else here can help. And honestly, like when it comes to things like syncing to a private blockchain state, or how do you select sequences when you have like certain limitations from a privacy preserving environment? How do we how do we create a block explorer? What's the best way of doing that? What's the best way of performing upgrades when you have where it's not just some kind of automatic process that can be easily manipulated. And the community has really, helped us immensely with those kinds of things. Enormously talented people have spent a lot of time providing us with really useful and helpful feedback and ideas. And this kind of approach, it's challenging. It's challenging internally because when we say build in public, what we really mean is at a technical level, we're airing our dirty laundry. It doesn't feel good to admit that you don't know something. It doesn't feel good to have technical work, software that's exposed to the world that you aren't confident in yet because you're still building it. And it took a big culture change in the company for people to really engage with that. And I'm very grateful to everyone in ASIC for being so conscientious about it because it's not easy. Hopefully our efforts have been visible to folks in the community. So that's the foundation of the culture in Aztec, how we've been going about engaging with the community, and now we have a lot of engagement to do because we have a lot of both opportunities and puzzles that we are working with, and maybe Joe, you can talk about that.
Yeah, definitely. I think just kind of looking at what we've been doing kind of this year and how it's changed is probably a good way to frame this. So we usually kind of do a lot of retroactive grants for the kind of community developers interacting with Noir. So if you build something awesome with Noir, just get in touch. There's likely funding available after you've built it. That was kind of working well for us, kind of just growing the ecosystem of developers and getting kind of really smart people to kind of become ZK Build. But more recently, we've had to kind of think a little bit about how do we test kind of the water of this new design space of applications that can be built on Aztec, and that's where we've started this track we call the Alpha Build, and these are kind of themed build-a-thons where there's normally kind of a bit of a brief. There's some challenges kind of set by the Aztec team, and we kind of reach out to developers to sign up for these. If they're selected, they can participate, kind of get access to DevNet early, and actually kind of build at the cutting edge and see what can be built with Aztec. And these have been going really well just to kind of help developers and us explore the design space of private applications and what you can do with this hybrid model of private and public kind of execution. So that's been fantastic to kind of help us all go down the journey of what applications are going to look like on Aztec, what account contracts can look like on Aztec, given we have full account abstraction. And so we're I think we're still taking applications for the second one. Claire can jump in if I've misspoken or it's about to start.
It closed a day or two ago, but if anybody DMs me and you want to still apply, I will get you in there, and I will ask for forgiveness.
Nice. Sorry, Rafi. So the next one's kind of focused on identity and using kind of one of the community's Noir libraries actually. So it's focused on ZK email and kind of what you can do. Now we have these kind of abilities to prove things about our identity and identity in the loose sense from Web 2. So your email inbox is kind of filled with things that kind of constitute your identity, whether it's I have a Coinbase account, I've filed a UK tax return, or I have a social media account. All these things you can kind of prove and use to kind of build up an identity on a system like Aztec. And so there's challenges around that we're really excited about, and we'll keep doing these to kind of help developers explore the design space of these applications, all with the view for kind of people who are interested and want to build on Aztec to get ready to deploy applications for testnet. So that's one of the tracks I'm really excited about, because it's, these applications weren't possible and are not possible on kind of any other chain. So it's exciting to see what's built here. I think the other area is obviously like on the sequencing side, like a decentralized network needs people to run its nodes, and so we're still kind of tweaking machine requirements and making sure that we can support some degree of home stakers. And so there'll be kind of opportunities for people who have experience there to participate in various decentralized testnets as a validator or a node operator. And so that's another area the community can kind of help. If you've got experience kind of on other networks or Ethereum, then we'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, amazing. And it's obviously all leading up to testnet, which is such an exciting moment for any project, such an exciting moment for the community. And as we get closer and we understand more about like timing and requirements, we're going to be sharing all of that so that people who want to participate and like help us test this out know how to get involved. Well, thank you guys so much for stepping through that. I do want to take some questions and open it up to the community. I will say, there are some things that we're not here to talk about, right? So welcoming everybody to the stage who has kind of like a question about the roadmap or about something that the founders talked about. And just go ahead, I guess, and get in line, and I will approve you to speak here. So yeah, I see Dima is here. Dima, do you want to? I just approved you. Are you able to speak? Okay, maybe Dima is having some technical difficulties or dropped off. There's one other person in line, so let me go ahead and approve you. Amin Cad, you're approved now. Are you able to talk? Larissa, am I doing something wrong here?
All good. I see them as connecting, so maybe we can just take a few seconds to let them connect.
Okay. All right. Yep. Sounds good. Maybe there's a little bit of a delay. While we're waiting, if anybody else has questions, like you can post on the thread here. I see like Daniel asked some things, or you can also get in line, raise your hand, and connect. Let's see. While we wait for the two folks who raised their hands, let's go ahead and get into Daniel's question. So, Zach, Joe, can you see this? Daniel asked how much of the cryptography will be quote unquote taped out and won't be upgradable after mainnet. Is there a risk of vulnerabilities emerging in the proving system, and what are those potential risks? Are you guys able to take that on?
Yeah, I can definitely tackle that. So by taped out, like certainly when we launched, the plan is not for the cryptography to kind of be like done and dusted, and then we skip away into the sunset. I think we are going to do our absolute best to ensure the cryptography is secure. We're going to audit this thing with a fine-tooth comb, both internally and externally. We have a very, very talented security team, talented cryptographers, and we take our work seriously. That being said, like one of the risks of launching decentralized is, well, how do you fix a bug, particularly cryptography bug? And so, we have a pretty detailed and robust upgrade mechanism in place to fix bugs, fix cryptography issues, and whilst I hope there aren't any issues, we must plan for the assumption that there are. So certainly we have mechanisms to rapidly fix them. Longer term, no, the cryptography is not done. I always see it as a work in progress, as in there is almost like a Moore's law effect in the advancements of state-of-the-art zero-knowledge cryptography, and for Aztec to be successful long term, the network needs to be able to stay on top of those trends. It's a bit like the traffic example. You got a congested city with lots of cars, lots of traffic, so you build you double the width of all the roads, and what happens is you don't make the traffic any better, you just have twice the amount of cars. Basically, the more complex, the more capable we can make our cryptography, the more people are going to more people will do with it, the more computation they'll put into it, the more complex and advanced the ASIC smart contracts are going to become. And I don't see that being there being really a ceiling to that for the next 10, maybe 15 years. So certainly there's always going to be like a core cryptography team within ASIC that's always going to be upgrading the cryptography. It's not going to be particularly like rapid, as in I'm imagining maybe once every 1 year, 2 years, we do like a big release where the cryptography changes to something more advanced. Obviously in a way where it's as backwards as compatible as we can make it. But certainly, yeah, it's not a done thing by any means.
Thanks. I also see, I think Dima and Adrian both were able to get confirmed as speakers. So Dima, I think you were up first. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question? Okay, we might be having an issue, I guess, getting other folks to be able to speak, which is a shame. But feel free to drop your comments on the thread, your questions, and we can try to get those answered for you. And sorry for the technical issue. Is there anybody else who'd like to sneak in one more question? I think we're at time, but we can do one more.
Yeah, I'm able to talk.
Adrian, hi. Okay, perfect. Sorry about the tech difficulties. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you, team, for all these explanations. One question about the roadmap and especially the community track. Where do you see the end user? Where's the community building happening, and how do you want to attract users as a chain?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about this. And so at the moment, all of our focus is definitely more developer focused on kind of building out experiences and products that users will love and care about. And that doesn't mean that we aren't going to build a community on top of that, but it's kind of like we want to give them ammunition and we want to give them kind of experiences that will delight them. And that will happen kind of as testnet goes live and beyond. And so at the moment, we've got to build out things like a wallet, a block explorer, and the first set of applications, which hopefully will be kind of very different to what communities are used to on other L2s and other blockchains. And once that's done and we have kind of a stable footing and we know what developers can build, we can start kind of targeting communities and going after them all around the world and telling them about the importance of a network like Aztec. So it's coming. It's just the developer kind of side of it is our kind of focus today, because ultimately users need something to do, and so we've got to build these and help developers build these amazing projects on top of Aztec first.
Yeah, thanks.
Just to expand on that, it's a great answer, but it's like, in order to, as Joe said, for our users to have memorable, delightful experiences, there need to be a robust ecosystem of applications and services they can use. It's a bit like if one can equate the ASIC network to, everyone calls blockchains well computers, right? So let's say ASIC network is a computer. Well, we're building a computer, but a computer is not very useful to the end user without software. So we need application developers to build software. So it's a staged process.
Yeah, Adrian, thanks. Really good question. Sorry, we don't have time to take more. I think we can do another session soon with a lot more time for community questions. But if you guys kind of enjoyed what we were sharing today, make sure to check out our Twitter profile. We have a link tree up there that'll navigate you to like our new Telegram announcements channel, to Discord, where you can talk to the devs and like get more answers to questions if you didn't already. And with that, yeah, we're at a wrap. So just want to really thank Joe and Zach for coming on and stepping us through this. And if you haven't checked out the interactive roadmap, like it really is kind of fun to explore and play around with. So please do check that out, and we'll see you at the next spaces. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for listening, folks.